International travel is way down. People are not coming to the United States. We have a rather large market with the Canadians.
He created an atmosphere that's very hostile for us.
With everything going on south of the border, it just seemed to be a lot safer to just travel within Canada.
This is the U.S. departures area of Montreal's Trudeau Airport, which is particularly quiet at the height of summer. And one of the most visible signs Canadians are staying away.
I love going to the U.S. I spend a lot of time there.
But now you're curtailing that.
Yeah. No.
All in direct response to what President Trump is up to.
Basically,
yes.
yeah. Yes.
I think the most consistent thing is that the Canadians have not forgiven Mr. Trump.
Canada boycott costs U.S. billions. That's not a headline, it's a real and escalating economic shock. Canada, long known as America's most dependable tourism partner, is now quietly walking away. The numbers are striking. Fewer Canadian travelers, empty hotel rooms, and billions in lost revenue across the U.S. But this isn't just about missed vacations. Behind the scenes are rising political tensions, trade disputes, and a growing wave of public sentiment in Canada that's reshaping cross-border travel. So what exactly triggered this boycott? Why are Canadians canceling trips to the U.S. at historic rates? And what kind of long-term impact could this have on America's tourism economy? Let's examine the data, the decisions, and the deeper meaning behind the dollars. Because when your closest neighbor decides to stay home, it's never just business as usual. Section 1, the root of the boycott. To understand why Canada is turning its back on U.S. tourism, we need to go back to the first quarter of 2025. That's when former President Donald Trump, now campaigning for a political comeback, reintroduced a 25% tariff on Canadian steel and aluminum. He framed the move as a way to protect American manufacturing, jobs, and reassert trade dominance. But the message it sent to Canada, not so friendly. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau didn't just respond with a press release. He took it public. In a nationally broadcast statement, he said, "Canadians should think carefully about where they spend their money. Let's invest in our own people, our own destinations, our own economy." And that sparked something. Almost overnight, the phrase "Boycott USA" began trending on Canadian social media. Tourism boards in provinces like British Columbia and Ontario launched campaigns urging residents to vacation at home. Even Canadian celebrities joined in, some canceling U.S. trips and encouraging fans to explore Canadian alternatives instead. This wasn't government mandated, it was organic and powerful, because for the first time in decades, traveling to the U.S. wasn't just a vacation, it became a political statement. Section 2, the financial fallout. So how much is this really costing the United States? Let's look at the numbers. According to the U.S. Travel Association, just a 10% drop in Canadian tourism would lead to $2.1 billion in lost revenue. But this isn't a 10% drop. It's a collapse. In May 2025, road travel from Canada into the U.S. fell by 38% compared to the same month last year. Air travel dropped by 24%. And June followed the same trend, sharp double-digit declines, particularly at popular border crossings and major airports. That translates into real money, billions of dollars not being spent on hotel rooms, restaurants, amusement parks, national parks, concerts, shopping outlets, and guided tours. Economists estimate the total financial impact could reach between $6 billion and $21 billion by this end of 2025. That's not just a hit to the tourism sector. It's a blow to local economies in states like Florida, New York, California, Arizona, and Washington, where Canadian tourists are a vital part of seasonal business. For many small towns near the border, Canadian visitors make up over 50% of annual tourist income. But there's more. The ripple effects extend into employment, hospitality, transportation, retail, food services. These industries collectively support millions of American workers. According to projections, up to 140,000 U.S. jobs could be at risk if the trend continues through the peak travel season. And it's not just low-wage jobs. Hotel managers, tour operators, airport ground crews, rental car fleets, entire service ecosystems are affected. In some border towns, duty-free stores have reported revenue losses of over 40%, with some on the verge of closure. What began as a policy decision in Washington is now a financial crisis in local communities. Because when a neighbor like Canada pulls back, the effects are felt not in headlines, but in paychecks, business closures, and economic stagnation across tourism hubs nationwide. Section 3, a human face to the story. Behind every statistic, there's a person making a choice. And in Canada, that choice is becoming deeply personal. The Washington Post recently profiled Canadians who canceled long-anticipated trips to the U.S., not because of cost or convenience, but because of principle. One woman from Toronto said, "I canceled my Vegas vacation. I don't want to spend money in a country that is trying to punish mine." A retired couple from Vancouver known as Snowbirds, who usually winter in Florida, shared, "We've been going for 15 years, but this year we chose Mexico. It just felt wrong to support a place that's taxing us unfairly." They're not alone. A recent survey showed over 65% of Canadians support reducing personal spending in the U.S. as a response to trade tensions. For many, this isn't about anger. It's about alignment. Where you travel is where you invest your values. And for a growing number of Canadians, that investment is staying closer to home. Section 4, Strategic Analysis and Policy Implications. Let's step back and look at the bigger picture. Canada isn't just any tourist market. It's the United States' #1 source of international visitors, accounting for more than $20.5 billion in spending in 2024 alone. That's more than tourists from China and the United Kingdom combined. Canadian travelers don't just visit once a year. They come multiple times on weekend getaways, business trips, family visits, and especially during the winter months. They're frequent, predictable, and high spending. So when a significant portion of them start canceling trips, the impact ripples across entire sectors: hospitality, retail, air travel, border economies, and even healthcare systems that cater to snowbirds. And here's where the policy disconnect becomes clear. The tariff decision was made with manufacturing and trade in mind, but it failed to anticipate collateral damage in tourism and services. That's a critical blind spot. It highlights how economic policy can unintentionally harm allied industries. Beyond the numbers, there's also the soft power dimension. Canada and the U.S. share more than just a border. They share values, history, and economic interdependence. But relationships like markets are sensitive to tone. When diplomacy becomes strained, even the most routine exchanges, like tourism, can shift. The U.S. Travel Association has already called on policymakers to consider the broader economic impacts of trade decisions, urging a more holistic approach. Because when strategy overlooks sentiment, the consequences aren't just political, they're personal and deeply economic. Section 5, Future Outlook. So what does the road ahead look like? If the boycott continues, the United States stands to lose millions of Canadian visitors annually. And it's not just a short-term dip. We could be witnessing a long-term behavioral shift, where Canadian travelers reevaluate their relationship with the U.S. as a go-to destination. Already, tourism agencies in Mexico, Portugal, and the Caribbean have reported increases in Canadian bookings, many from people who would typically spend their winters in Florida or Arizona. And it's not just about escaping the cold. It's about trust. Rebuilding that trust won't be quick or easy. Discounted airfare and travel deals may help in the short term, but they won't fix the root issue: a political and emotional disconnect between neighbors. What could make a difference? A clear diplomatic reset. Some experts suggest that the U.S. should consider targeted visa reforms, especially for Canadian snowbirds, perhaps extending seasonal stay limits or reducing entry friction at the border. Others point to the need for joint tourism campaigns between the two governments, reframing the relationship, rebuilding goodwill, and emphasizing the deep cultural and economic ties that unite both nations. Because while travel is transactional, tourism is also emotional. And when feelings shift, so does everything else. Section 6, Bigger Questions and Reflection. Here's the deeper question. When your closest neighbor, your biggest tourism partner, chooses not to visit, what does that really say? This isn't just about flights and hotels. It's about perception, about relationships, about whether policies meant to protect one part of the economy are quietly damaging another. Canada boycott costs U.S. billions, but the real cost may be harder to measure. It's the erosion of a long-standing friendship. It's the discomfort of neighbors choosing not to knock on your door anymore. And in a global economy where perception drives behavior, small shifts in public sentiment can lead to massive real-world outcomes. Tourism is more than leisure. It's connection. And once that connection frays, rebuilding it takes more than tax cuts or airline deals. It takes recognition. It takes diplomacy. And most importantly, it takes listening. So where does this leave us? One thing is clear. Canada boycott costs US billions. But the money lost is only part of the story. It's a wake-up call about how deeply interconnected global relationships really are. When policy is made in isolation, consequences rarely stay isolated. And when a longtime friend like Canada chooses to step back, it's worth asking why and what can be done to repair that bond. In the months ahead, we may see travel numbers rebound, or this could mark the start of a more permanent shift in tourism patterns between the two nations. Either way, the choices made now by leaders, by businesses, and by travelers will shape that future. What do you think? Is this a short-term protest or something deeper? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And if you value analysis that looks beyond headlines, pause, reflect, and breaks the news down without the noise, consider subscribing. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.